My name is Erfan Vafai, and I'm with Texas A&M AgriLife Extension as an Extension Program Specialist. In this part of the training, we're going to learn a little bit about the Pollinator Citizen Scientist project page and how to actually contribute towards the project. When you go to sixleggedaggie.com/pollinator project, you will see this, except for this not yet released, that will be removed when this project is actually live. As we scroll on down, you'll see very similar to those that contributed last year, we have a similar format. One of the first things we ask you to do is to complete the training on your own schedule. We have a 3-part training this year. The first one is the exact same as last year. That's the pollinator training, the basics of pollinator identification, and the setup of this project. Part 2 is what you're watching right now, how to actually contribute to the project. And lastly, and this module is brand new by Dr. Vikram Baliga from Texas Tech on plant identification and resources to help you with plant ID. This should hopefully assist us in ensuring that all identifications of plants are much more accurate. After you've watched those 3 videos, we ask you to complete the quiz. This Citizen Scientist quiz is very similar to last year. We've added a few questions related to this 3rd module, this 3rd part of the training that again is provided by Dr. Vikram Baliga. When you click on this particular link right here, it'll take you right to the quiz. And you are asked to get at least 24 out of 28 correct on this quiz. So that's a passing grade of 85%. It is vital that you first get an 85% or above on this quiz before you start contributing to this project. Only those that have completed this quiz with the 85% passing grade, their contributions will be included in the final analysis, whereas all others will be excluded. In years past, we sometimes have maybe a few hundred out of the 20,000 plus contributions that we get that come from people that have not completed the quiz. We'd like to be able to include those, so please make sure that you first complete this quiz and that the email address that you use in this quiz is the same email you'll use for the contribution page. So again, I'll repeat that. It's very important that the email you use here is the same email you use for contributions, because we're using that email address to basically certify that you've completed the quiz and received the 85% passing grade so that we can actually use your contributions in that final analysis. Now, I hope you're not too intimidated by this quiz. Very similar questions to last year. If you've watched those 3 videos, this quiz should not be too difficult for you to complete. Of course, there are sometimes some questions in here that may be a little bit challenging, and you can just retake the quiz an unlimited number of times until you finally get that 85% passing grade. When you do receive that grade, you'll automatically receive a certificate in your email saying that you've completed this quiz and you've passed, and that you can now start contributing to the Citizen Science Project for 2021. It's very important to note here that this quiz needs to be completed for contributions in 2021. Because you've completed this quiz in 2020, and even though you've received a certificate for that year, does not mean you can automatically start contributing again or not have to complete the quiz for this year. We're asking everyone to retake this quiz. It has, again, some updated questions in order to ensure that everyone's reporting accurately so that our data set is reliable to work with. Now, going back to the Citizen Scientist Project page, we've also included the identification guide yet again. This guide is a single-page, double-sided document that you can use to help you in the field. So if you want, you can print that off. It has some basic information on pollinator identification and some of the basics of how to contribute to the project. And then this brings us to the actual contribution page. So you can click on this link, or you can bookmark sixleggedaggie.com/pollinator. And that will always forward you to the most current contribution page. So you may sometimes update it, and as such, it helps to bookmark that link instead of the actual form. So when you click on this contribute link, you'll see it'll bring you here to an ONA form right here. And this project, this form right here can be accessed on your mobile phone, on your iPad, or on your computer. So if you want to fill out this information on paper and come back to a computer later, you're more than welcome to do that. Now, one of the first questions it asks is this your first observation within the last 2 hours? The reason why we ask that is that hopefully we can streamline your contributions. So if you're doing 10 consecutive observations together, the very first one, you want to hit this yes, but subsequent ones you hit no. And you'll notice that there's some information that we don't ask you to repeat again if you're doing multiple consecutive contributions. So we don't ask you to repeat things like, for example, your email, because we can actually see based on the contribution ID and your device's IP, we can basically make assumptions about who is doing what contributions as long as they're within those same 2 hours. Now, when you hit this yes, you'll see it asks first for your email. So again, very important that we ask that you use the same email you used to get your certificate. Also, we ask that each contributor have their own separate email. It's very important that if you are representative for your particular region and you're entering contributions for, say, several different contributors, they all need to complete their own quiz and you need to enter all of their own emails. We need to be able to isolate specific observers when we're actually looking at this data rather than pooling data all within a region. This is very important, again, for ensuring that we have good quality data and being able to isolate specific differences from observers. So maybe some observers have some beehives as well nearby, so they're seeing a higher proportion of honeybees. We need to be able to isolate some of that data. So very important that each observer is contributing with their own email and has completed their own quiz with a passing grade. Next, you want to add your location. So if you're on a computer, let's say, my web browser is actually blocking my location services. So by pushing this button, it's not actually finding where I am. On a mobile device, you might be able to tap that. It might ask if you can detect your certain location or you want to allow this app to find your location. You can hit accept and it should be able to find where you are. In some circumstances, if that does not work, you can just put in your town. So in this case, I'm going to put in Overton, Texas, because that's where I'm currently based out of. The map will pull up to there, and I can scroll around if I need to become a little bit more accurate. And I can tap on there, and it automatically populates the latitude and longitude for me. You don't have to worry about altitude or accuracy. That is something that would be filled out if you hit this location services button. But again, that's not something we're requiring at this time. For current date and time, you'll notice if you tap it, it'll automatically find the current date and time for you. Now, of course, if you are writing data on a piece of paper and coming and putting it in the computer later, make sure you're adjusting this to the actual time you made your observation. So this is the date and time that the observation is being made. Next, again, you want to put the temperature which the observation was made. And then we're going to put in the Latin name of our plant species. So this is relatively new, it was implemented halfway through last year and into this year, that as you type in the Latin name, you'll notice it starts to automatically populate with some plants that we have in our database. And this database is based on plant species, binomial Latin names we've been able to confirm from observations that you have made. So over time, we keep adding to this database. Now we have to do it manually. So that means that if your particular plant is not in here, what you can do is just search for other. And when you tap on other, you'll notice that this little box under here just appeared. It says plant species binomial Latin name. And you're going to have to manually type in your Latin name in this particular space here. Now, over time, again, if we start seeing a lot of observations of that specific other plant name, and it is a confirmed Latin name, we will eventually add that into that database, and hopefully you won't have to keep manually typing it into there. Next, we want you to select how much of the plant is in bloom. Now, this is relative to peak bloom of that particular plant. Right, so if it's in peak bloom season, you're going to put more than 75%. If it's just starting to bloom or on the tail end of its blooming, we want to put less than 25%. This kind of helps us isolate whether pollinators are The decrease in pollinator visitations to that plant is due to just less blooms, or is it just because there's other more attractive things around, or it's just not that popular of a pollinator plant? We also want you to select the dominant bloom color of this particular plant, whatever that might be. And then this is when you're going to start your 60-second count, right? So you're going to select a 2 by 2 foot area of which you're going to observe of those particular blooms of a specific monocrop, right? I mean, 2 by 2 of one specific type of plant, of one specific type of bloom. And you're going to time yourself for 60 seconds and start making the observations of the number of honeybees, bumblebees, other bees, non-bee wasps or non-bee flies, butterflies and moths, and beetles. And this was all kind of outlined in the part 1 of our training in terms of what these different categories are and how to identify them. You're going to enter those numbers here accordingly. And optionally, you can add a photo of the plant if you so wish. We can use this to help with some of our quality control. So when we're actually going to write some publications, we can say that we verified, say 10% or 5% of the images to ensure that the plant identification that was given was accurate to the actual photo that was also provided. So that is helpful if that is something you can provide, especially on your phone. You can tap on here and it should allow you to just take a photo straight from your phone and upload it into here. And this is any other additional feedback that's specific to this particular observation. If you have any feedback to give directly to us, then please email one of us and we will get your question answered. And lastly, you hit submit, and that should submit. Now, in this case, I've excluded my email. And you can see it says this field is required. So it is required that you fill out all of these parts of the survey in order for it to actually submit. Now, you'll notice I just left that without completing it. The nice thing about the survey, now I wouldn't count on it, but you can. If you click on Contribute Again, you go back to the survey, it'll recognize that you have an incomplete form. You have an incomplete survey. So as it starts to load, it is going to recognize that. Depending on how speedy your internet is. Here we go. And you can hit, you'll notice right here, unsaved record found. So would you like to load this record or discard it? So we can actually load that record and it'll bring it right back up and I can continue where I left off. I can put my email in there and I'm good to go. All right, and that kind of concludes how to contribute. Now I do ask, if you're a contributor, I highly recommend you join the Pollinator Citizen Scientist mailing list. You can do that right here and you'll get updates both in terms of the data and any changes or common questions that we receive. We really ask that you read those emails because it can be very difficult for us to try and answer all of the questions or all the emails coming in from citizen scientists because there is a lot of repeat. And you'll notice if you actually scroll on down, you will see a Q&A section. So these are a lot of the common questions that we've received over the last couple of years. And we add some answers in there as well. So we ask you to please peruse this Q&A section. Make sure you've completed that training before sending us an email. And we'll get back to you as soon as we can. That concludes the part 3 of this training, How to Contribute. And thank you so much again for being here with us. And we look forward to your contributions.